Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Glad to have you with us. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and this is your How to Bet Rookie of the Year episode. On today's show, we'll talk about how do you bet Rookie of the Year? What's the process for finding those candidates? What kind of numbers should you be looking at in preseason versus in season? What's the timing? How do you make sure that you don't miss the window on when the value can be found on this award? How do you define value when it comes to Rookie of the Year? And to do all that and more, I'm joined by NBA futures analyst Brandon Henderson back with me again. He's going to be on several of these episodes. Glad to have Brandon back with me. And Brandon, as we do every year, we have a set of pretty much rules that we go by. And you, my friend, have excellent ones that you use as guidelines for how to find the value in these preseason markets. I'm going to let you take it away. Give me the rundown of, in preseason, what are the rules that you look for when trying to guide your Rookie of the Year bets?
Yeah, as you know, I focus a lot on like the historical profile. What does each of these awards look like? So we'll go through that in each one. And it's always tricky. You and I kind of go head to head a little bit on, okay, so that's who won it before, but what about this year? The rules don't always apply. There are exceptions to the rules. So we'll talk through that just to give people just a quick rundown of here are the last 10 Rookie of the Year, just the names, just to refresh your memory. Paolo last year, if you listen to the podcast, we were all over him immediately all the way throughout. Scotty Barnes, LaMelo, Ja Morant, Luka. That's your last 5. And then Benjamin Simmons, Malcolm Brogdon, Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Michael Carter Williams. So I looked back at really a lot of my rules are since LeBron. Since LeBron won Rookie of the Year. So that's kind of where I start. I've got 5 rules. Rule number 1 for winning Rookie of the Year, you got to score a lot of points. Real surpriser here, right? You got to score some points. That's going to be the rule for pretty much every award except Defensive Player of the Year. Minimum 15, probably 18. Since LeBron won the award, 18 out of 19 Rookie of the Years have won at least or have scored at least 15 points a game. Average 17.7 during that span. Malcolm Brogdon, the one exception. Malcolm Brogdon is the exception on pretty much everything, so can't count on him. 14 of the last 21 Rookies of the Year led in points per game, although 4 of the last 6 did not. Again, Brogdon's on that list. No Simmons, no Ja Morant, no Scotty. They're usually close, but have not led. So, you gotta score points, 15 at least, probably 18. Any real surprise here for you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think production is always going to be like a pretty good evaluator if you're looking at rookies. I think one of the things that this is in some ways a less sophisticated award in that DPOY, there are shortcuts that the voters take because we don't have accurate ways to assess defense. But Sixth Man of the Year is kind of similar to this one. MVP, I think it has a lot more. There's a lot more that goes into it. We try and seek out like, well, who's actually the most valuable versus like Rookie of the Year, because it's not most valuable Rookie of the Year. It's just Rookie of the Year. It's pretty easy to shorthand this. So I'm not necessarily surprised that production is going to be like the baseline starting point for a lot of this.
Agreed. And we'll unpack that a little more in Rule 3. First, another production one. This one's your favorite from a year ago. Rule number 2, you always need to bet not just on points, but points and rebounds and assists. We love our PRA. You need a minimum of 25 PRA, hopefully 30. Since LeBron in 04, 16 out of 19 Rookies of the Year led in points, rebounds, assists. The guys who didn't, second, and third. So if you are not top 3 in PRA, you are out of luck, and you are very likely number 1. In fact, 2 of those guys that didn't is because Zion got hurt and Embiid got hurt. Otherwise, they would have led and won as well. So everybody since LeBron, except 2 guys, at least 25 PRA. Last 5 years, here's the stats for Rookie of the Year. 18 points, 6.5 boards, 5.5 assists. So right at 30 points, rebounds, and assists. Again, production. Counting numbers, this isn't hard. We need guys that put up numbers.
What was Paolo's rebound rate last year?
I don't have it right in front of me. 7, 8?
I'm gonna
somewhere in
pull it up
there.
because I want to know. I want to know what his rebound rate was last year because it doesn't feel like Paolo's a good rebounder, as Team USA would definitely attest
Yeah,
to.
we're as we
Poor kid.
record this, several hours after Team USA has been eliminated from the FIBA World Cup by Germany. So
Yeah,
feeling a little differently about some of
but
these guys at this exact moment.
hey, he averaged 6.9 last year. That's a really good rebound
Okay.
rate. So
Yeah.
I will concede. If nothing else, I'll say this: it can't hurt. Like it's
Yep.
at least like a really good addition, and it's not a non-factor. Like I think if you rebound, it is definitely something where it's like, hey, not only did he average 18 a game, but also he grabbed like I could see that happening.
Right.
So fair enough.
Yeah, and I think too what it says as much as anything is it just shows volume in minutes. Like you need a guy who's going to play a lot and do a lot of stuff. That's really all that we're saying here, and that shouldn't be a real surprise. Again, rookie of the year, not a super hard one to parse. We're not looking for well, who's the 12 minutes guy off the bench with the high Vorps and Schwarps. Like that's not it. So that actually brings me to rule number 3: rookie of the year, not about defense, not about efficiency, not about wins. So here's the numbers. Since Emeka Okafor, 2005, clearly a defender, clearly a big part of why he won. Since then, I don't know if you could really say defense was a big reason anybody won Rookie of the Year. Here's the closest. Scotty Barnes, 2022, probably in his case for sure. Ben Simmons, though I'm not sure exactly how much we were in love with his defense early. He had the numbers. Brogdon, I guess. I don't know. Brogdon won because we ran out of options. Embiid was hurt. And maybe Chris Paul. Really, that's it. Defense does not win you Rookie of the Year. We'll come back to it, but that should be a big red flag for our guys Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, 2 of the 3 favorites. The 2 favorites at most books, because defense is a big part of their value. Efficiency, not about efficiency. 5 of the last 15 Rookies of the Year led in BPM. Only 5 were number 1. In fact, under half were top 2. Average BPM finish. And you know, Matt, BPM is the gospel for me. Average finish is basically 4, 3.93. And last decade, only 2 of our 10 Rookies of the Year finished second. So Vorp, a little better because you're counting in playing time now. But are you surprised at all to hear that defense or BPM don't seem to be in the heavily in the metrics here?
I'm not surprised. It makes a lot of sense to me. I was just looking this up, and I think it's interesting. Your Holy Grail is BPM. Mine's EPM,
Right.
estimated plus minus. So I just decided to go ahead and look this up. Only one Rookie of the Year since 2011. So in the last 12 years, only one has had an EPM worse than minus 1.0. Paolo was minus 0.9 last year. The worst was Wiggins in 2015. That was minus 1.6. Everybody else has been either around 0 or a positive. I'm a little surprised at that. I would have thought that this would vary a lot more, that this would be a lot more negatives. I thought, and like granted, like your EPM is very much weighted towards 0. So you're not going to have like a lot of, it's very hard for you to play enough to be like a minus 4. So Dylan Brooks will probably try this year, but still, like in general, I'm a little bit surprised at that. And it does kind of give me like a little bit of a guiding post here where I will be kind of looking at guys throughout the season and being like, okay, is their EPM better or worse than say minus 0.5, and take a look at those just from like a guidepost here. And maybe that's like a better way to do it is I do think that if you were a pure production guy who was genuinely hurting your team, and it gets tough to determine with a lot of the teams these guys are on. But if you're genuinely hurting, I do think that will get held against you to a certain degree. And a good example of that might be the reason that Cade Cunningham won over Jalen Green, right? Is like Jalen put up some numbers.
No. Neither one of them won. Scotty Barnes won.
Barnes.
Scotty.
Yeah, and like Jalen wasn't even really in that combo, right?
Right.
Like Cade made a late push at the end. He off to a terrible start, made a late push at the end. And then that's another good example there because Scotty had the best EPM of those guys. So not to say that it's like a guidepost. I think it more is instructive of, once again, of why I'm so high on EPM, which is it winds up being it's very much a correlative thing for me and not causation, where for whatever reason, EPM does tend to reflect a lot of the things that the basketball discourse values, at least from a voter perspective. So I'm not going to like look at it, and if I don't know, Oscar Thompson is number 1 in EPM, I won't be like, let's bet him. But I will kind of probably look at it as the season goes on.
Yeah, no, I think that's the point here. And I think who comes to mind for me is Walker Kessler from last year. Like, he's the guy who is defending well, who is on a winning team for much of the season, making a winning impact, whose numbers and BPM, EPM, I'm sure all popped and were really good, didn't win Rookie of the Year. At the end of the day, it wasn't really, really in the hunt for it. Like, I mean, he's top 3, but he didn't win. He didn't come close to winning at the end of the day. So I think just to say, me, my Joe Ingles side of things here, where I'm like, yeah, but Joe Ingles, the best bench player, all the metrics, all the advanced, that's not the way to do this. We're not going to pick the advanced rookie. We want to just pick the guy with the numbers. So
another good example of this is I thought that Steven Adams should have won in his year. I think it was no, it wasn't the Brogdon year, but it was.
No, I think that's Michael Carter Williams.
Williams. I thought it should have been Adams. I was like, he's starting for a playoff team. Like, he's starting for a playoff team and he's good. What are we doing here? And like, there was just never any shot, right? And that's a good example of this, where it's like, you can do a lot of good things and help your team win. And if you're not putting up 18 and 5 in one of the categories, you're probably not going to win. Yeah,
Steven Adams probably not gonna win some awards. Not a numbers guy. My man does a lot of things, but not the numbers. Wins also. That was the other part of rule number 3. Wins are not really relevant here. Last 15 rookies of the year averaged 33.7 wins. That's including paced out seasons, obviously, for the shorter ones. Average 10.7 seed. So even in our expanded postseason format, they averaged missing the play-in still. So look, you probably got drafted to a very bad team. That's how the draft is set up. You probably aren't good enough to make the very bad team not very bad anymore immediately as a rookie. That's how basketball works. We're not penalizing you for that. It's the same thing with BPM here. It's if Victor Wembanyama comes in and the Spurs win 60 and are the 1 seed, he's going to win Rookie of the Year. We're going to reward you if you are that awesome. But since that's not going to happen, we're not going to penalize you for it not happening. 4 of the last 15 Rookie of the Years were top 8 seeds. That's it, 27%. So it helps. We like if you win, especially if you have a big role on the winning team. But the more you win, the less you're probably going to play as a rookie. I'm sorry, that's how it usually works.
This doesn't matter. You're absolutely right. For the betting purposes, I just want to real quickly say that this is bullshit, and that the fact that we don't reward guys for earning minutes on playoff teams makes me crazy. I'm sorry. It's hard for rookies to earn their coach's trust. And the secret, the thing that nobody talks about, it's hard for rookies to earn the veterans' trust. The guys in that locker room that are trying to get their contracts, that are in their advanced years, that are trying to keep their numbers up for bonuses, they do not want to be feeding and helping along the kiddo who's just trying to get his feet wet, right? There are good vets that take care of their rookies, and there's a lot of teams where those guys are left on their own. And if you're a guy that walks into a team with playoff aspirations, let alone championship aspirations, and you contribute to the degree that you wind up starting because you are that important, that should matter way more. That said, this is a betting podcast, and we deal with what is and not what should be. And Brandon's absolutely right. It does not matter.
All right. So far through 3 rules out of our 5, we basically have learned, hey, just get the numbers. That's it. Get the numbers. Great. We knew that about awards already. Last 2 rules, I think, are the most interesting here.
I'm told this game is and always has been about buckets. So
I have heard that. In fact, it is and always has been about buckets. Rule number 4. This one's really important. Rookie of the Year, bet on a top pick, like a really top pick. So here's the numbers. Since the 1950s, only 4 Rookies of the Year have won outside of the top 10 picks. 10 picks. We're down to 10 guys already. Only 4 out of 63. That means 94% of all Rookies of the Year came in the top 10 picks. And only 1 in that stretch after number 18. So sleepers, great. Don't go too far down the list. Sleeper might be the 7th pick or the 9th pick or maybe fringe lottery. Then we're out. That's it. That's what history tells us here. And again, by the way, who's the one after number 18? Do you know? Someone's still playing.
Really?
Malcolm Brogdon, my friend.
That's
The
right.
exception
Brogdon.
to all the rules on the
Was he
list.
second round?
Second round, number 36.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is, as you kind of mentioned, Brogdon won as kind of a default because of who?
Because Joel Embiid played 36, 39
Right.
games. I forget.
That's
Somewhere
right.
in there.
So like Embiid wins that in a walk if he winds up playing 50
Oh,
games,
sure.
40 games, And so like Brogdon really is like the outlier of outlier, but it does kind of show you, in the event that this class is considerably worse than expected, if it is truly bad, then there might be value on long shots, but that has to kind of be your starting premise here, is that not only does Wembanyama have to be bad, but it's going to have to be like all of the guys that were highly touted, they're unimpressive as well in order for you to get to a spot here, because those guys are going to get more attention, more coverage, and more appreciation for what they do.
Correct. And it's not just top 10 pick. We can whittle down even further. Since 1990, so the last 3 decades, 24 out of 35 rookies of the year, 69%, top 3 picks. 3! We're down over 2/3 of the time to 3 dudes. This year 4, because Chet Holmgren counts from a year ago. But that really narrows the field. In fact, 16 times out of 35, 46%, nearly coin flip. It's literally just the number 1 pick. You could just blind bet the number 1 pick at nearly even odds and still be almost profitable for 3 decades. So more recently, if you care about just what's happening lately, 9 of the last 15 top 3 picks. And 2 of the guys I missed went to number 4 because Evan Mobley got hurt and because Blake Griffin was hurt that year. So again, I'm sorry that makes this not interesting to talk about. The guys at the top of the draft are the best players. This is selection bias working in our favor. The guys at the top are the best. They're going to the worst teams, so they're getting more playing time. That's why this works. And look, if you listen to me on other podcasts at Action Network, NFL Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, rookie picks overwhelmingly, and anything you look at are take the guy at the top of the draft. They went there for a reason. They're going to earn the playing time right away. They're ready to play. So history says we are probably down to, for this year, 4 guys in our top 3 for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I don't think I have any sort of like pushback against it. I think it is interesting to think about the idea of, do they go at the top for a reason, or do they get the attention because they were taken high? Like that corollary, I think, is pretty important.
Well,
like
again, selection bias. I don't really care what the reason is, as long as they're getting the attention.
Have you looked at rates in pardon the pun, but buckets? Have you looked at it as in like the rate of 1 through 5, the rate of 5 through 10, etc.?
Explain what you mean. Oh, I see. Like how often a top 3 hits versus how often a 4 through 10 sort of range.
Right.
Well, no, but I can do that very quickly for you here. So since 1990, 35 rookies of the year, 24 were top 3 picks.
Wow.
And that leaves 11 that were not top 3 picks, but only Michael Carter-Williams and Brogdon were outside the top 10. So 9 out of 35 would have then been 4 through 10 picks. 9 out of 35 is about 1/4 of the time. So not terrible.
Yeah, I think and that's kind of interesting, right? Is like, you definitely don't want to go beyond 10, but it is kind of, and I think one of the things here is also, if we're building positions, it allows you can cover your bases. Although I will say, like, even for me, portfolio better, I find Rookie of the Year, this is not one I want to bet portfolio on. And what I mean by that is like, it's got to be a situation where it's like a race between 2 guys, and then one guy pulls ahead, so I bet the other one, and then that guy pulls ahead, so I bet that's the only way I want to do this. If you listen to the show consistently, you'll know, like, I'm a portfolio better. I bet MVP. Like, I'll start betting MVP first 2 weeks of the season. I will move in November and December. That's how I bet that award. I'll probably do a little bit of that with some of the other awards as well. This is not one of them, because the narrative tends to establish itself pretty clearly and pretty evidently, and there's not these swings. And I think Paolo last year is a pretty good indication of this, where it's like, Paolo won the award in November and it was just done. And there wasn't anything anyone could have done. And you could say that really wasn't fair, blah, blah, blah. Again, we deal with what is.
Yep.
And like Paolo didn't shoot efficiently, and the Magic didn't make the playoffs, and honestly, Paolo's shooting efficiency was really poor, and he wasn't a great defender. And the Magic, I don't think, underperformed last year, but they weren't like a revelation either. These things that would have like definitely set him aside. You could have put it in question, especially with like, as Brandon said, Walker Kessler, with the impact that he had and the way that he played and the blocks and everything. But it was done. Like, it was just done. It was over. It was finished. And even when Benedict Mathurin got off to like such a hot start, it never really punctured Paolo's resume. Like, it was pretty much done, honestly, since Summer League. Like, we told you at Summer League to bet it then, and we're not, that I resist the victory lapping. The thing I'm trying to point out here is, to me, Rookie of the Year is a very evident award that we don't have to be like, well, okay, hold on, things can get weird. It usually doesn't get weird, which I think is really fascinating. Another good example of this, honestly, is again when we look at, sorry, but I'm going to go back to this. The Scotty Barnes year, I think, is like a really good example of this. Of like, why didn't Franz Wagner win? Like, why didn't Franz Wagner win this award? Didn't go high enough. I think it really genuinely is part of the issue there. So I definitely think you're right that there's definitely an anchor here to the perception of the top 5 guys being considered elite, and it's got to come from one of those guys, unless you are far and away the evident number one.
Yeah, I think the tie break goes to the guys that we all expected it to go to, right? Like if you're going to steal it away, you got to really grab it and make sure that it's yours in most cases. Last rule here, rule number 5. Now, this is a rule in a work in progress rule, but this is a trend that I think is a thing that we're looking at. I prefer a Rookie of the Year guard, but more importantly, I need an engine. So here's what I mean by that. Since Okafor 2005 won Rookie of the Year, only 3 big men have won Rookie of the Year. Paolo obviously being one of them, Blake Griffin and Cat are the other 2. That's only 3 out of 18 winners. 1 out of 6, 17%. Again, our top 2 favorites are big men this year. That has to be relevant to us. Now, I will point out, Zion wins the award if he doesn't get hurt. Embiid wins the award if he doesn't get hurt. Mobley, I think, probably wins the award if he doesn't get hurt. Guess what? Big men get hurt. Like, that's not an irrelevant part of this. It's not fair to say, well, they would have won. Yeah, but we need actual winners on our ticket. And the fact that big men were good, but not good enough to keep staying on the court for 2 guys who are going to be obvious possible injury risks, I think that matters. So that's very interesting. More recently, 5 of our last 7 winners were lead guards. And if you look, instead of lead guard as the hub, the engine of the team, because now that's Paolo, and that was part of our case a year ago, I think 5 of the last 6 really were the hub or the engine of the team. We need someone, we need points, we need assists, we need rebounds, we need the guy with the ball in his hands. Asar Thompson, I really like him. He's not going to be that for Detroit, not this year. He's the guy, like, when you watch him at Summer League, what you like about him is the ball moves. It gets to him and it goes to the next guy. He makes the right decision. It's moving along. He's not a hub. He's not going to be the hub for that team, not right now. So that really narrows it down again, because there's just not that many guys that you can play through. And I think as we get to Chet and Victor, this is a really important question, is are they the hub? How much are those 2 teams going to play through those guys? And is it enough to get to the numbers that we need here?
Who are the outlier? Who are the big men outliers?
Paolo, Cat, and Blake Griffin. And Blake, by the way, of course, did not win it his actual first draft year because he was injured. He won it the next year.
So the translation for this is, to me, there is a metric we can use, and it's just usage, man.
Yeah, sure.
And it kind of speaks a little bit to the fact that rebounds, like, we would agree that rebounds matter more than assists. Am I accurate in that description?
I think so. I mean, I think you just want to put up numbers, but rebounds are much easier. That's all.
Like, I think if you led the league in assists, or if you average double-digit assists, it'd be one thing. It's very difficult for a rookie to do that. Like, it's just very difficult for a rookie to do that.
Right. So really what you're saying is one guy might get 4 versus 2. It's hard for assists for you to make a noticeable difference with enough assists compared to the other stats.
Yeah, and usage is very easy, I think, to generate. And so Cat of those guys had the lowest assist rate, and he was at 25%. If you're not familiar with usage rate, like if you're above 20%, you get the ball quite a bit.
Yeah.
If you have it at 30%, you're Luka. Like you have it all the time. It's isocentric. Luka actually has the highest usage of any player to win Rookie of the Year in the last 25 years at 30.5%. Second highest was Kyrie at 29, and then LeBron at 28, and then KD at 28 as well. And guess who was fifth in usage rate? Paolo Banchero. And sixth, Blake Griffin. Last 25 years. So the correlation here is if you're a big, you better have the ball all the time.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's another reason why you and I are skittish, I think, on Wembanyama for Rookie of the Year. Is I don't know if he's going to have the ball all the time. I don't know if the ball's going to him at any point on the floor, time after time after time, versus like Blake got the ball all the time. Cat got the ball all the time. Paolo had the ball all the time. And if you're a guard, you're just dribbling up and in, and you already have the ball anyway. So that to me is the thing to look at here is if you're like, well, he's really efficient, so if he were to shoot more, he could win this. Don't do that, because there's no promise of usage increasing, especially for a rookie, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly it. So what I want to do now, those are the rules. Basically, we need a lot of points. We probably need points, rebounds, assists. Doesn't matter if you defend or win games or are efficient as much. And we know that we're looking at our top picks most of all. And we're probably going to need some high usage hub engine type guys. So this year, obviously, no shocker here, we have an odds on favorite. So I think it behooves us as we look at the players. We have to start with what do we think about Wembanyama? We've already gotten into that a little bit. And I think talk about Chet and Scoot, and then maybe hit some of the names further down the board. So Victor right now I see at minus 135 at our sponsor BetMGM. Those odds have been slowly dropping a little bit. They have been just inching down toward. Do you think by opening day, do you think we're at a plus number here? Or is it going to go that far? I see as low as a minus 115 out there right now. So we're getting there.
I'll say yes. And the reason I'll say yes is I think it's entirely possible that one of the other guys absolutely goes off in preseason. And then,
that's fair.
And there's a big push of money that comes in. 35 cents is enough to get this down to at least minus 110, if not to even.
So effectively, either way, you're looking at your choice here is Wembanyama versus the field. That's effectively the bet that you were being asked to decide. And you have to decide this, because if you like him, that's the bet. That's it. If you don't like him, the fact that there is a minus number favorite here, if that's not who you think is going to win, has to imply that there is significant value at all the other numbers down the board. If there is a minus number guy that's taking up half of the field options, the odds have to be in our favor later. So to me, that's why this award race is interesting this year. That's why it is bettable, because if you don't think it's Wembanyama, if you don't think he's the bet, then you've got a really good chance to go down the board and find the good value that's sitting there.
In our chats, we talk a lot about, in our group chats, we talk a lot about, like I talk a lot about like the market and is the number right. And so I'm curious from your perspective, I'll give you a second to think about it, about where you think Victor should be appropriately priced at outside the context of handle, because we don't know for BetMGM versus the other in the market. We don't know what the liability is on Victor specifically. I would have to assume it was high initially, and then probably they started taking on a lot of water at Summer League with Scoot and some of the other guys. So for me, I do think this number is high. I don't know if I can say it should be a minus number. So like, I think it's at least 30, I think it's at least 25 cents off. And I think that probably closer, like, I think if it gets to a plus 105, that's where I would start to be like, yeah, I don't know. That's probably a little bit long. I think he should still be, because he is that much of a phenom. He is that highly regarded. There is that much hype and attention on him. And, you know, he is 7 4 and is going to do a lot of stuff and going to have a big role. Regardless of how he looked at Summer League, that's not NBA basketball. He might look better depending on what Pop does with him. So I think anything that's plus 105 is too long, but that's probably my stopping point is 100. Like that's even money is probably my stopping point for where the value should be. And I think that anything over like 115, I would still kind of be like, I don't want to bet this. 110, and I'm like, I might. That's really the range of 15 cents that I would be looking at if I'm looking to bet Wembanyama. And at minus 135, it's absolutely a no for me. Not based off of Victor, but based off of the price. I don't think that's the right price for Victor Wembanyama, given what we've seen and what we know.
So I'll answer to the percentage, but I want to ask this first then, just to be clear. If you had a Rookie of the Year board and everyone is even odds and you could pick anyone, your favorite to win Rookie of the Year, your outright favorite would be Victor Wembanyama, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So he's not my favorite. He is my second favorite. I put his percent at 30%, somewhere in that range, which would put him something. I can't really make a good case for him being much further than the plus 200 or lower than that. So I think this number is way off. I think it is a very clear no bet right now, in part because part of the reason that I'm hesitant to bet on him is I think that, look, we know the body shape that we're looking at here. There's going to be times where he sits a game for a back-to-back for rest. It's the Spurs. It's going to happen. I'm sorry you found out this way. Like, there's going to be like a national TV Spurs game because they put a bunch of them out there, and Victor's going to sit because this team is going to play the long game. They know what they have in him, and they will be careful if they need to. There's going to be times where he probably is injured, and I hope it's not much, and I'm not rooting for it. But even if he misses a week or 2 weeks or something, now, important caveat here, when we did this in July, the rules for the new CBA were not even out yet that we knew. As far as I can tell, the 65-game minimum is not applicable for Rookie of the Year. In the CBA, it does not mention Rookie of the Year for that. So that does not mean voters won't consider it now that it's a rule for everything else. I think it still is going to be in the mind. But, you know, if Victor plays 62 games, he is not ineligible and not on the ballot anymore. But I do think there's a risk that he just doesn't play for a while. And again, that doesn't mean he can't win, but it does mean that his odds are going to drop a little bit when that happens. And we're at a minus number right now. Even if I want him to be my pick, can I not get this later sometime when he's injured for a little bit or he's resting? There's going to be bad numbers games because he's going to have 3 fouls in the first 5 minutes because he's going to foul dudes until he learns to tone things down a little bit. That's not been a huge problem, but it's just that's part of the player type. And now you had 4 points that night because you're in foul trouble, just didn't get into it. The Spurs, I don't think, are going to suddenly win 50 games, and they're not going to suddenly be the like, oh my gosh, just overwhelming. We have to give it to Victor for that reason. I think that the hype for Victor is in some part justified. He clearly is an incredible talent, but the overhype that we're getting is going to die down a little bit as we just get into, okay, well, now it's game to game and it's a long season. We're seeing this play out. The one caution I have for myself here, again, as you remind me importantly, humans vote for things. Humans are the voters here. And I do think if Victor looks as special as we think that he looks, and presumably he does, certainly I'm not saying he's a bust at all. I'm saying he is my second Rookie of the Year favorite. If it's close, I think there's going to be some voters who are like, man, I'm not going to be on the wrong side of history. Yeah. I'm not going to be the guy that 2 decades from now is the dude that didn't vote for Victor for Rookie of the Year. I'm not that one. So I do have some concerns there that my pick, Scoot Henderson, has to really win Rookie of the Year and pull away a little bit. Do you think that's a real concern?
Absolutely. If Victor doesn't, let's say that Scoot has a bunch of signature nights, 30 plus points, 35, maybe a 40 in there, which is very rare for a rookie, but Scoot's absolutely got the potential to do it. And honestly, his passing was really impressive to me in Summer League as well. But let's say Scoot has like a season littered with all these like signature performances. but the averages are still a little bit like, he only shot 41% from the field, and he shot like 32% from three. Like, it wasn't efficient. He just shot a lot, right? And Victor, the numbers aren't as explosive, but you're just like, that guy's amazing. Like, he just impacts the game in so many ways on both ends of the floor with his combination of talent. There's gonna be a lot of like, that's, look, he didn't have great numbers, but he's gonna be a Hall of Famer, and he'll get a lot of credit there.
Yeah.
An interesting comp, though, I think from that perspective, is honestly, we go back to Scotty Barnes. And the reason I say that is like, there were a lot of people that going into that draft that felt that Evan Mobley was the best player in the draft. Like, it was not a wild consideration. Like, it was a very popular take amongst very smart people that Evan Mobley was the best player in that class. And so, and like, Evan's numbers were not good enough, and so he wasn't able to get in that conversation. So we go back to the rules, right? Which is like, you're going to need to put up the numbers.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the injury stuff, both from a likelihood and a Spurs rest approach, I do feel are being slightly overstated.
Okay.
The reason, not by you, but I think you're echoing a pretty common sentiment, and
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
yeah, it's reasonable, and it's reasonable. I think that the body shape has us in naturally like I've seen this before, but it's like, well, we haven't seen this kid before, and everybody
Sure.
gets to have like their shot at it. The more interesting one, I do think, is that I genuinely do feel that San Antonio, while they'll be cautious, right, because they have his long-term future in mind, I don't think it will be as egregious as people are kind of expecting.
Sure.
San Antonio was extremely protective when when they rested Tim Duncan, when it didn't matter if Tim played. They didn't need that game. They didn't need to win that one, and it was like way more important. Like, there was no value in Tim. What
Sure.
does Tim playing in that game do? Versus with Wembanyama, if they're able to say the reason he plays in this game is so that he can improve, they're very committed to those processes. And so, while I do think that there will be a reasonable amount of Spursiness in their approach, I'm at least not anticipating, I could be wrong on this, but I'm not anticipating a hyper cautious peak end of Spurs rest management load for him. So those are things that I don't necessarily consider as concerning. My genuine concerns have way more to do with, I don't know what his game's going to look like. And that's enough for it to be, honestly, I talked about how at 105 it's too long. Does that mean at a 105 I'm betting it instantly? No. At 150, am I looking at it? Yes, I'm looking at it.
I'm looking at it that price too.
Yeah, but even then, it's not like a super attractive bet for all the reasons that we've kind of talked about. And for me, it does have to do a lot with what the game is. This is a good discussion. I want to hear we've gone over this. We did an entire pod earlier in the summer about Rookie of the Year, but I do want to go ahead and give you the space to give the Scoot case, which I think is an excellent one, and it's going to be a popular one. I'll talk a little bit about the context of his situation in a second, but I want to give you some time. Give me the very abbreviated but strongest case you can make on why you have Scoot as the favorite.
Yeah, so Scoot right now at BetMGM is plus 450. That's the best price out there, implied 18%. I have him more than double that. He's my favorite here. I have him closer to 40% as the favorite here. Again, that feels strong, especially since I'm already at 30% range for Wembanyama, and I give Chet around 20. That's 90%. Yeah, that's what we said in the rules. Top 3 picks. That's who wins Rookie of the Year. Spoiler, I don't want Brandon Miller. So I'm taking the other 3 as my top 3 guys. That's what I'm going on. Scoot fits all the boxes. He is a franchise player type. He is a star on the court. He is a big personality. We saw that at Summer League in the interviews, the way that he stepped on the court and was the immediate leader of the team and the leader of the guys on the side of the team and like on the sidelines and everything that he was doing. He oozes star potential, as does Wembanyama. I'm not saying he doesn't, but Scoot is going to look like he's the guy that's already being talked about as, in a lot of other drafts, he would have been the number 1 pick. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, he should have been the number 2 pick in this draft, but that's its other thing. But he's going to get that conversation. And Scoot is not an ordinary rookie in that this dude's been playing professional basketball for 2 years already. He's running the professional offense at the G League Ignite for not 1, but 2 seasons and has run it quite well. And it shows when you step into a summer league game or when he had the games against Wembanyama, you see that he is a pro ready, NBA ready point guard. I think that the talent he has, the way that he gets to the rim or gets to his spot, to the pull up, he can get the shot off pretty much whenever he wants. You see all the point guard skills that you look for in an NBA player. I think he enters into the league as maybe a top 20 point guard. Like when we talked about this in the summer, we went down the list. It's about that range. If I want a point guard right now, just for this season right now, I think he's maybe 18 to 22, 25 range. He is a starting, slightly below average point guard as a rookie. You're going to put up numbers. I put him at something like 17 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. That's much higher than where I'm at for Victor Wembanyama. I have him something, I forget, much lower than that. That's 28 PRA. I have Victor not even getting the 25 that we talked about. Damian Lillard, we'll get there. Damian leaves behind, I hope, for this bet, 32 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists. Those numbers are up for grabs as soon as Dame is out of the lineup. So that's a lot of usage and a lot of shots and a lot of assists. And look, Portland is the moment that they trade Dame, if and when it happens, they're going to want this dude to be their new franchise face and the star. And they're going to, as much as the Spurs thing, back to Victor for a second, it's not really that I think that the Spurs are going to just like do the Tim Duncan thing. It's more that I don't think the Spurs will pull out all the stops to make sure Victor wins Rookie of the Year at the end of the season. I don't think that's the San Antonio Spurs' priority. I think they're a smarter franchise than that. I think they know what they have. I think the Portland Trail Blazers, if they trade Damian Lillard, want Scoot Henderson to win Rookie of the Year, especially over Victor Wembanyama. I think that they will want him out there in those games down the end. They will want him chucking and scoring 30 and 40 points down the stretch. And I think he can. He can get his points. His passing has surprised me. That improved a lot the last couple of years to have some more of those true point guard skills. So I have him 40% as not an odds-on favorite, but as my favorite here. I don't think his number should be any longer than plus 200. We grabbed this. I grabbed it at plus 600 in the summer when we first talked about it. I'm surprised, honestly, that's still plus 450. And I think part of that is because we don't know the Dame thing. And I want the long number. You know me. I want my long bets to pay off. So I would bet it right now rather than waiting for the Dame news, because I think if Dame goes, then the odds swing and he drops to like a plus 300. But I want to hear from you on where do you stand, not on Scoot necessarily. I want to hear that too, but start with us. How much do I need to factor in the Damian Lillard thing? And can I even bet this right now, or am I crazy?
I was going to ask you, in your implied probability, how much do you have the possibility of Dame not getting traded? Like, that's an important question.
Close to 0.
Okay.
I'm assuming Dame is gone.
The problem here, I think, is you have to raise that a little bit, which should at least impact at least the number that you want to put out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like where he should be, because this is the NBA, and this is like how the bookmakers think of it, is like, right? Is like, look, there are all these random possibilities that can happen that you have to account for. Is it 0? No. Is it 10? No. What I will tell you is I don't expect Dame at training camp. I don't expect Dame in preseason. And I don't expect Dame on opening day roster.
Okay.
Sorry, opening night active roster.
Sure.
Okay. The most likely outcome has to be that he gets traded before the season starts. It is an inconvenience. It's going to be a headache. Everyone's going to get asked about it. The players are going to be annoyed about having to answer a million questions about Dame. You don't have a clear direction. Blah 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 blah. I'm expecting them to basically be like, Joe Cronin to basically be like, Dame, we understand the situation. Don't feel like you have to come. We're going to continue working on trying to find you the trade that you want. No, I'm still not interested in Nikola Jovic. Thank you for asking. those types of things, but he'll probably be excused from basketball activities. If a situation doesn't resolve itself, Dame will probably be like, all right, I'm tired of this. I want to play.
Yeah.
And until you know for sure he's not going to take Scoot's usage, there is a risk of this being not like it's neck and neck with Wemby. It's a 0 because Scoot's coming off the bench behind Anthony Simons with Dame. It should be noted that like Simons will take up some of the usage and will probably be like, it's my time. There will be some of that. Like Scoot's going to get empowered for sure. I expect Scoot to look awesome in preseason. I expect to be a lot of hype about him. I think that this number probably drops. So if we're looking at this from a non-Dame considered perspective, this is the best number I think you'll get, because I do think the minute that he steps on the floor, there's going to be a whole bunch of, oh shit, with Scoot, because those of us that saw him at Summer League were like, oh shit. Like from the minute that he stepped on the floor, you talked about this with him running an NBA offense with G League, and this is really important. Victor's been playing in international basketball, which if you follow FIBA, you will recognize is entirely different from NBA. NBA is its own sport. It's not basketball. It's NBA. It's very different.
Yep.
And there are sometimes just little ways, even if Wembanyama's physical skills translate, there will probably be small ways in which he struggles to adapt. As part of that, Scoot Henderson, on the other hand, will look immediately, that guy belongs on NBA floor. He looks like a 3-year veteran. Holy God. So I'm with you in terms of, if you want to bet Scoot, this is probably the time to bet it, which is honestly, as we say that, I'm kind of like, man, maybe I gotta get around and go ahead and put the 450 in.
Let me talk the math real quick, just to put some numbers to it because we can't not factor in the Dame thing. So let's factor it in a little bit. At plus 450, we're implied 18%. I'm going to do the math in my head, so hopefully I get this right. If we assume the books are factoring in, what if Dame stays? And we'll say stays means for the season, because that's probably what it takes to really impact this here. If that's 25% likely, then the 18% implied is really saying, if Dame was gone, 24%. But we got to chop we got to chop a quarter of that off because of Dame. Now we're down to 18. So 25 seems about as high as I would think that there's a chance that Dame stays.
Way high.
So now we're really saying, okay, Dame could stay, or also Scoot is more like a 25% if Dame's gone to win. I still feel really good about that. Again, I'm saying Dame staying is 0% basically in my projection, but I have him at 40%. So for me to consider this to be a bad bet, Dame has to be more than 50-50 to stay to get to this 18%. So even factoring in Dame, which we have to do, I still think that it's a bet now situation for me.
Yeah, I still think this is probably 21%, right? Like 21% versus the 18. I think that's probably where I would come down on it. Because here's the other thing is, like, it's one thing for him not to be traded. It's another thing for him to play for the Blazers. Those are two separate questions.
Right.
Like one not automatically means the other, but there's a world in which Damian Lillard does not play basketball in 2023-24. It would be a disaster for everyone involved. But there's a scenario in which that happens, and he doesn't play basketball at all this year. But he's on the Blazers roster, which would honestly be great for you, because that means there's no Tyler Hero or anybody else taking up usage.
That's true. That's even better.
Yeah, that helps you out.
Well, what do you think about, since we said top 3, let's touch quickly. Neither one of us is betting them, but Chet Holmgren plus 350 at BetMGM. Shorter odds than Scoot and Brandon Miller. Why are you not betting Chet or Brandon Miller?
So I actually want to go Brandon Miller here first. I think Chet's more interesting from a basketball perspective. Brandon, you and I, again, we talk a lot about this in our group chats about how I've kind of come in on, you can bet the number, you can bet the team, right? You can bet the number of the team or the spot.
Yep.
If we're looking at the rules and we say we want a player that's going to get the ball, a player that went high, and a player that's going to score at 13-1, doesn't objectively Brandon Miller have to be the contrarian play here? He's a top 3 pick. He's going to get a lot of usage. Lonzo will throw him the ball. He's going to get at least LaMelo's going to throw him the ball. Lot of, like, if he probably won't have assists, but he'll probably have shots and rebounds, which is what we care about. high pace system likely with
Yeah,
LaMelo.
sure.
And at 13-1 for the number 2 overall pick, if we take our perceptions of his game out of it, doesn't this objectively have contrarian value?
I think contrarian value is the way to put it. My pushback is going to be, are we sure that he gets the shots and the usage?
Yeah.
Because look at the dudes on the roster, and I know
Yeah.
you hate this team. I don't love them, but I hate them less than you. The starting lineup, I don't know if PJ Washington starts. I think at eventually, I think Miles Bridges is back in the lineup. So starting lineup is probably LaMelo, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward for whatever games he's healthy. Miles Bridges at the 4, probably Mark Williams starting at center. That's your 5, and PJ coming off the bench. He's going to get usage wherever he's at, or Miles off the bench, or whatever. And yeah, Hayward will miss some time, and Rozier and whatever, but like that's your 5. So Brandon Miller, I don't think is starting for the team. Off the bench, you've got still LaMelo Rozier usually on the court. So that's the guy we're relying on to get the ball to our Brandon Miller scoring machine that we want. That's not a hub. It's not a usage star. It's LaMelo and Rozier taking it up. And if it's not, it's our buddy James Bouknight getting in, and he's going to get his shots up. Like, Summer League Hornets were a disaster because everyone that this team drafts is like, it's my turn. I have the ball. I'm shooting now. And like Brandon Miller had bad nights at Alabama and bad days for Alabama in March Madness in the tournament. Why? Because he did not have guards to get him the ball and run the offense. And I like LaMelo more than you. You really don't like LaMelo. But this is not the team that I want my non-handling dude in as a pick here. So I just don't think he gets the touches.
He should have gone number 2. He shouldn't have. I don't even know if he should have gone number 3. Like, I'm not. Again, we bet the player. I'm with you, right? For me, this is simply a betting podcast, and if we go by the rules. I know your point about usage is accurate. If we think like, look, it's likely that the Hornets probably move Rozier and like they're on a clock and they've tried. Like this is one of the problems I think with this logic is, well, they might trade Hayward and Rozier. You don't think they've tried? You don't think those conversations have happened? You don't think every team that's looking for a point guard or a backup point guard hasn't kicked the tires on Terry Rozier and found out the trade value is too high for Charlotte because of the contract? Or that every team that starts to look at Gordon Hayward is just like, he just can't stay healthy. So they might just be stuck with him. You're absolutely right on these things. You're absolutely right. I just kind of look at it and go, what does Brandon Miller do? Well, he scores. What does Brandon Miller do? Or where did Brandon Miller get drafted? He was number 2. Like he fits our categories at a number that is not commiserate with what we would typically see for a number 2 pick in the spot. So
he does, except for that last rule. And that's why like the 25% or 20% usage, the hub engine concept, I really don't see him fitting that even as they clear out guys, because it's going to be LaMelo with the ball in his hand. So like we got to clear dudes out and get LaMelo hurt again and just have nobody left. And now maybe it's Brandon Miller. Even then, like that's not him. That's not who he's meant to be in the league. So I agree. I have him as the 4th favorite on my board because of all the stuff we've said. Number 2 pick, scoring, top 3, everything. He's still 3% on my board. So that's still not the right number. He's implied 7% here. I think he's contrarian, but not contrarian enough. Like, I will not be surprised at all if the season starts and like a month in, he suddenly is 30-1 because we just haven't really noticed him do anything. And then now if you want to do the contrarian long shot, sure. I don't mind the nibble then. Chet Holmgren to me is another guy where I cannot see him being anything close to the hub engine usage thing that we need here. He's just not it. He's not going to be it right now when you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams, who are really good players and deserve to have the ball in their hands. Chet is going to be the Walker Kessler this year. He's going to be a very good defender. He's going to have a lot of very good BPMs and EPMs, I think. He's going to have like a 68% true shooting. I'm going to come on this podcast in February and be like, shouldn't Chet Holmgren be in the Rookie of the Year conversation? Because that's how I want to vote. But that's not how we vote for the things. I don't think the numbers will be there. I don't think the scoring will be there. I don't think that he is the right pick for the award. He's going to have to be we don't really have a great candidate, so let's pick the guy who we really like because he's been a good defender and on a good winning team. And OKC, 47 wins. Wow. That's the Chet case. And I don't think this is the year for that because we have Scoot and Wembanyama.
I don't like the number at 350. I just don't like it. I'll make here's like a case for you.
Okay.
What's the average scoring total since
17.7 points a game last 15 years.
Let's pull him to 15. Let's say that he's going to not going to score as much, but he winds up winning. And let's say that he's going to get to 15. Can Chet Holmgren get 15 points off of 2 open threes, 4 free throws, and some putbacks a game? Like, that's like it's not that he's like a go-to scoring weapon. It's that Shea gets him open enough. He gets putbacks and he puts it in there. And to your point, I think he's a sneaky rebound candidate. Like, maybe that's the thing is like, hey, you know what? Wembanyama averaged 18, 6, and 4. And Scoot averaged 20, 3 and 5, which would be really high, by the way. Like Tyreek Evans, notably 25-5. But look, Chet, Scoot got hurt or whatever, and Chet averaged 15 and 10. Right?
Yeah.
That's like kind of, I think like the idea is like he could junkyard his way to 15, 16 points. Not junkyard necessarily, but just like picks up random points in random situations. My thing is I'm just like, OKC's got a lot of mouths to feed because they're a really talented team. Yeah, there's just a bunch of dudes on this team. Like, Shea's going to have an extremely high usage because he's awesome. He's a top 5 MVP guy. He literally was 5th on the MVP ballot last year. Yeah. Jalen Williams, likely to get more touches and more shots and more role. Josh Giddey, freaking awesome. Like, they've got dudes.
Yeah. Lou Dort, going to get his shots up.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Right.
Chet Holmgren in college, 14 and 10. 14, 10, and 2 assists. And so I will push back a little bit on the rebound thing just because that's part of my case against both Chet and Victor. Obviously, they're real tall and have long arms and should be able to rebound, but the center of gravity and the strength issue, it can work long term, but it's going to take some time. And Chet added a lot of strength since last year while he had the year off. But like even in Summer League, when we saw him, there were times he got absolutely pushed around on the boards by not NBA players who are, like guys who are going to play in Europe this year. These guys are going to get pushed around on the board. So I don't know. I absolutely do not think either one of these guys gets to 10 rebounds per game. I don't think they get that close. I think maybe like 7. And so now we're back down to like, okay, 13, 15, 7, and 2, and we're short on the 25, let alone the 30 PRA.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of this too, I think is you do kind of have to ask yourself, do you think that he can pick up enough rebounds randomly throughout the game? But I'd also kind of point out, like, this is both so there's a lot of talk about rebounding with Team USA, right? Because Jaren didn't rebound at all. Jaren's never been a good rebounder. I think the difference is with Chet, like, this is actually a pretty good point. Yeah, no, Chet's fundamentals in rebounding are very poor. Chet's still also kind of historically still been a pretty good rebounder in terms of production-wise because he's the size of a giraffe. And so, like, just having, like, sometimes being tall is just able to get you enough to be able to get you home. But it's a fair enough question.
I actually think Chet's a pretty good rebounder, so I'll push back on the fundamentals thing. But nonetheless, it's funny we're here because I think a year ago on this podcast, or maybe 2 years ago, I think my Cade versus Jalen Green argument that we both lost was rebounds. Give me the rebounds. And now here you are 2 years later arguing for Chet for the rebounds. I at plus 350, you're not arguing for him. You're just saying that's the case if he gets there.
You're at really good at this.
Plus 350 BetMGM. I actually have that priced relatively correct based on my number. I'm not going to bet it, but I actually don't think that that's a terrible number for him. I think it's about right.
Yeah, the difference is that I've learned that you're really good at this, and so I don't want to go against you on several of these elements. And it being plus 350, being right, I kind of agree with you. That's kind of the thing here is I'm just like, that seems right. Like, I don't think do I have an edge there? No. So we're running long. Before we get out of here, You have a long shot. I will reiterate the only bet I have for this award, which is I have Amin Thompson. He is currently at our show sponsor, BetMGM, 25 to 1, 2,500. I still think that that's good value. I understand all the reasons why people are going to push back on it. He's not going to start because it's going to be Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green. It's a crowded backcourt. Is he going to get enough of a high enough usage? A lot of this for me, we talk about like betting the number versus betting the player. Well, one, can he score? Yes, he can score. Can he pass? Yes, he can pass. Can he rebound? I actually think so. He's really athletic. I think he's gonna be a sneaky good rebounder for a guard. Was he top 5? Yes, he was. So he's within our categories of like being a top 5 pick, not top 3, which would be better, but top 5, which I think is still good enough. And there was, I will say, on draft day, I believe everyone's always like, it was always going to be this guy. I never believe that. I think there's a lot of conversation about Amon in the top 3 the week of the draft. I also think it's entirely possible that they wind up shifting some things around and trading some guys, and that Amon by the end of the season is either starting or playing a bigger role. I think that he is the kind of guy that is going to not only put up production, but I think he is going to be a guy that helps them win and is a guy that's a dog on the floor. He's got that dog in him, meme.gif. So for me, this is very much a play on the guy at the number. If this was, I don't know, 15, I'd be kind of like, I don't know about that. Right? 10 to 1, no way. But 25 to 1 for the player that I genuinely think is in my opinion, no worse than the third best player in the draft. And I would be not surprised if he was second. I will absolutely take Amin Thompson and would advise betting it again. I love Amin Thompson 25 to 1.
Wow, not surprised if he's second. That's bold. I like that. That's second ahead of Scoot then. So Victor then Amin.
No, I think it's one of the two.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, I agree with frankly almost all of that. I think to me, I need KPJ gone for me to really get on board here because Fred and Jalen aren't going anywhere, and so I need somebody out of the way. So I think it's probably got to be KPJ. If Amin had been the Portland pick, and we were looking at Amin as the face of the franchise, Scoot possibility once Dame got traded, I'd be really interested. He looks really good. I agree with all the stuff you said about him, the player. I can't get there with Houston, but I get it. I do see a 30 to 1 out there if you want to jump on that. Like you said, my long shot here is down the board. I'm going with Keyonte George, 80 to 1 at BetMGM. Look, he does not fit my profile as a top pick. Not at all. He's the number 16 pick. So it'd be one of the longest rookies to win. But if I were making my board of who can actually step in and produce and do all the other stuff that I need, he's about 5th to 7th on my board, behind only the guys we've talked about, basically. He's next on my list. So he's the guy, we talked about him in July. He's the guy people were buzzing about in Summer League. And as the draft nerd who follows this stuff all year, he was the guy, the one guy who jaw dropped at Summer League by, wait a minute, where was this at Baylor? We didn't see this at Baylor. And the thing that we didn't see is Keyonte George is a point guard now. And at Baylor, he was the standard chucker shooting guard, the very thing I hate normally. But suddenly, he's running offense for the Jazz. He averaged at Vegas Summer League 6.3 assists per game, up from 2.8 at Baylor. So now suddenly, 22 points a game and 6 assists for them. He took 9 threes a game, shot 44%. That's very encouraging. Both of those numbers as well, the volume and the percentage. And then Utah, I'm not in on Utah this year. We got Clarkson, Agbaji, Sexton, Keyonte. Those are the guards. Maybe one of those guys clears out. Maybe we get some chance at usage here. It's a long shot. It's 80 to 1, but I think it's a little long. I think it should be like 40 or 50 to 1. So still probably going to lose, but I think he's the right long shot play.
If you were, I know you don't do this, but if you were building a position, and I saw you had to take 3 guys, you'd have Scoot, you'd have Keyonte. Who'd be your third guy?
I mean, I think I just have to add Victor at some point just to get a little protection in there, probably.
Makes sense.
How about you?
I'd have Amin, Scoot, and I would have Anthony Black.
Yeah, I like Anthony too. We talked about him on the July pod as well, if you want to go back and listen.
Okay, that's going to wrap it up for our guide to how to bet Rookie of the Year. You'll hear more about picks for these when we do our best bets for awards. We'll do that the week before the season starts. If you got feedback, if you got more questions, hit us up on Twitter. I'm at HP Basketball. Brandon's at Wheaton Brando. You can find both of us in the award-winning Action Network app. Make sure, by the way, if you're listening, go find the Favorites podcast pick'em contest. It's favorites.actionnetwork.com. Sign up for the contest if it's still available. Also, make sure to go to youtube.com/The Action Network. You can catch video versions of all of our podcasts. Hope you guys have yourselves a great week. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, let's get buckets.